welcome to the Iraq Football Podcast, ladies and gents. You've probably been wondering where we've been. Well, we've been waiting for Iraq to finally appoint a new manager. As with anything with Iraqi football, it's turned into a circus, waiting for this manager and that manager, but we are finally at the point where we can say we have a new coach to lead us into the new World Cup qualification campaign. I'm your host Hassan N. Bilal, and I'm joined today by none other than Hassan Osama. Hassan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, great to be back. Lots to talk about since the last podcast we recorded.
Yeah, there was so much going on in the world of Iraq football, but every time we tried to record a podcast, there would be an extra delay regarding who our next manager is going to be, this, that, etc. So it's been a bit of a headache. But we're finally there. We know that Dick Advocaat is going to be the next manager for the Iraqi national team. It was expected very much so that it was going to be Carlos Queiroz, but one thing led to another. There was delay after delay, and we never quite end up actually getting Carlos Queiroz as the manager. Now we have Dick Advocaat as the new manager. Hassan, thoughts on the new appointment?
Yeah, I was honestly really hoping that we would seal the deal for Queiroz, because in my opinion he would have been the perfect upgrade over Katanec, perfect to take over in such a short time. But yeah, things didn't work out there for a number of reasons, and we ended up with Advocaat. We'll see how it goes. He's a very old school coach. He's been coaching for a very long time at this point. It's hard to say sometimes with coaches like this when they've been coaching for such a long time. It's hard to say how they're going to perform with the next in the modern times. I guess his last season with Feyenoord was somewhat bumpy from what I could tell, but he is a very famous coach, has a good record overall through his career, so there's a bit to be happy about, but we'll see. I'm not 100% sure how this is going to play out. So
I think it's a bit of a strange one. I think ideally, as you mentioned earlier, Carlos Queiroz would have been the perfect appointment. I think in terms of style, he would have fitted a lot more closely with what Katanec had set Iraq up to be, which is a solid defensive side that can grind out wins. And I think Queiroz would have kind of maybe taken us to the next level in terms of that style of play, how to develop the team from where we were, and I think he would have given us a very good chance of getting us to the World Cup. However, Dick Advocaat, he is a very experienced manager. He's a manager who has done very well both in terms of club level, international level, and he comes in with, I think, 35 years worth of coaching experience behind him. If you look at, for example, Feyenoord, the last season that they were there, they are also a very good defensive team. They conceded, I think it was 36 goals in the season, which is the third best in the league. So they can still defend, and I think as Iraq are basically built around the defense, hopefully can actually pick up the pieces left by Katanec. It's a strange appointment. It's clear that Dick wasn't the main man that the FA were after. But if I'm honest with you, I've spoken to some people from Holland. I'm talking about football players here, and they are excited by this appointment. They think Dick is the right man to take us to the next level. They think his experience is going to be very, very important, because we like to talk about how our team is experienced, they've played a lot of games, etc. But how many of them have actually played at the highest level? Not many of them at all. So while there are players like Humam that have made a lot of appearances for Iraq, how many actual World Cup qualifiers at the later stages have they played in? How many games have they actually won? I think in the last World Cup qualifying campaign, we only won something like 4 games. So we're going to need a coach with experience. We're going to need a coach that has the ability to set formations, set sides up, tactical sides up that can go against Iran and South Korea away and actually grind out a result, which I think was something that we were lacking in previous campaigns when, for example, we had the Radi Shneshil. So it's an interesting one. If I'm honest with you, when the appointment was first announced, I wasn't too keen. I really had my hopes on Carlos Queiroz, especially as a Man United fan. I know all about Carlos Queiroz. I know what he's about, how much influence he had on Manchester United's success post 2003. But it wasn't supposed to be, you know. And like I said earlier, anything with Iraqi football, you're always going to expect there to be a lot of headache, a lot of drama, and nothing is straightforward. But here we are. The question is, would you rather still have Katanec, assuming that was an option, or would you rather have it be in the position we are now, which is we've qualified for the next campaign, we don't have much time going into the next few games, but we have a new manager, somebody bringing in fresh ideas, somebody bringing in a different attitude, considering that under Katanec towards the last few games that he played, we really did look a very tired side. Thoughts on this, Hassan?
Yeah, so it is kind of a strange thing for me because overall I was quite happy with the progress that had been made by the national team under Katanec. It was a pretty consistent side, stable defensively, uh, and and we were looking to be, we were not dropping too many points in games that we shouldn't be dropping points overall. However, the last several games that we played, it really looked like we were at the end of a cycle, and a change needed to be made. So, as I said, like in an ideal world, we would have had Queiroz taking over. Would have been perfect, but I think as you mentioned with Advocaat, like a very experienced coach who's basically seen it all at this level. He's coached so many different teams here across the years. It might be what we need for this kind of for this stage, but we'll really see like how hungry is he as a manager, how he'll be able to adjust so quickly to the difficult environment of the national team with Iraq. So we'll really have to see. I don't think it could be. We could go worse than how we looked in the last several games when we were just struggling hard against it's like Hong Kong. So we'll see. It should be the only way up. The only way is up from here.
So just to go over some of the teams he's managed, we're talking about some absolutely enormous clubs and countries: Netherlands, PSV, Rangers, Borussia Mönchengladbach, South Korea, Zenit St. Petersburg, Belgium, Russia, Serbia, Sunderland, Fenerbahce, Feyenoord. These are not small clubs for us to sit and scoff at, talking about he's a finished manager, this or how hungry is he gonna be. I think with a manager like this, no matter how uninterested he's gonna be, he's gonna bring in new ideas. He's gonna bring in experience, and I think there is a lot to look forward to. You mentioned Katanec and how well we progressed under him. Absolutely correct. I think anybody who says we didn't improve under Katanec is lying. There's a reason that Iraqi FA kept him for as long as we did. However, realistically, would we have qualified to the World Cup under Katanec? For me, everything indicates that absolutely no chance that would have happened. There's no way. We were struggling against Cambodia and Hong Kong. Um, I'd imagine it was a very stressful time for Katanec, and I do feel sorry for him. The Iraq FA are not an easy organisation to work with. You have people from the left, from the right, pulling your chain, trying to influence your decisions. There's a lot of organisations external to the country and the national team as well that are trying to also have a say in matters. But you know what? That's not completely uh, indifferent to other countries. There's always going to be external influences. I think with Katanec, we reached a point where there was nothing new to be done. Nothing, no new ideas, no new tactics, and I think it was time for a change. Unfortunately for Iraq, because of the coronavirus, that change had to come with a very very quick turnover in terms of the new manager coming in and the new World Cup qualifying game starting. And that's, I mean, pretty much the same situation other countries are going to find themselves in. So whilst it's not ideal for us, that's the situation we're in, and if we are serious about qualifying, that's something we are going to have to deal with very quickly. If we look at the games coming up in the next round, so we were put into Group A. The the group consists of Iran, South Korea, UAE, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. That's not an easy group. Um, we put together in the last podcast a group that we would like to see Iraq get. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty much similar to this group here, bar one or two changes. So I think it is a kind group. I think Iraq on the day can beat every single one of those teams. The question is, do we have the quality, do we have the experience to beat Iran and then South Korea back to back, or to get, let's say, a win and a draw, or a draw and a draw, which would still be a good result? I don't know, but under Katanec, I couldn't see us getting anything near what we need to qualify for the next round. If I'm honest with you, even now, like I'm looking at the new manager, the situation, it's tough. I don't really think that we have that good a chance of qualifying. But I'm a bit more hopeful now. Because on the Katanec, I had absolutely no hope. Now, I think it could go 50-50. Either Dick Advocaat comes in and he's an amazing manager and we qualify, which would be unbelievable, or he comes in, doesn't really adapt quick enough, he struggles to fix a very disjointed team, and we don't qualify. In which case, under Katanec, we weren't going to qualify anyway. So hey, might as well flip a coin and see if a new manager is going to improve things. So we find ourselves in a very difficult spot, but with all things considered, I support completely the decision to bring in Dick Advocaat by the FA. I think it's the correct move. Am I mistaken in this, Hassan?
No, I actually agree. So look, that's the thing. Like as I said, there's like the last games with the national team under Katanec, like it looked like a finished team. Like there were no ideas. There were no, and I can say like we can blame the players for some of the issues as well in the national team, of course. But at the same time, you can see like tactically there was nothing. No changes. Like the substitutions completely ineffective. So I would have had zero hope if we had continued for this round. It's hard for me to like really predict what's going to happen now with the new coach because of course he's going to have to adjust in a very very short time, and the situation with the national team it's very difficult for any coach to come in just because of how many influences there are and so many different people pulling in so many different directions. So he's going to have to adjust very very quickly, and the first games are going to be very very tough as well. So it's hard to say, but that's the thing. It's like when you're trying to go qualify to the World Cup, especially through Asia, it's never going to be easy. Like so, our group is probably the best kind of group we can hope for, but that's still not an easy group, by any means. You still have South Korea and Iran as the favorites to qualify first and second. But you have games like against Syria, against UAE. Those are not easy games. You're not gonna get a guaranteed win. Lebanon as well. They could grind something out when you're playing them away. So it's not. There's no guarantees in this kind of group. And to qualify for the World Cup, you have to get results against South Korea. You have to get results against Iran if you want to qualify as among the top two. For me, at this moment, unless we see more. But right away, I'd say my expectations is something around third place.
Let's look at the group in a bit more detail. So we have Iran at probably the first place prediction. I think they're a very good team. I think they went through a rough patch, but they seem to be finding their feet again. They beat us in the last game, although I wouldn't say it was a completely comfortable victory. I think look, that's a game that can change on the day. If Iraq turn up, we make it very difficult for them. I think Iran realistically are the better team. They have the better players. but that our players will always be up for that. We'll never make it an easy game for Iran. So there's a hope that maybe if you win one of those two legs, so I'd take Iran in our group. I think that works in our favor compared to Japan, where I think that's a disaster. You're not getting anything away from Japan. So that Iran game, yeah, I'll take that. Then you have South Korea. South Korea didn't look extremely impressive in the group stages. I think Iraq on the day as well can challenge them, give them a run for their money. The South Korea team, they'll probably be fitter than us, but this is where I think a manager like Advocate can work his tactics around our, let's say, lack of fitness, and play in a way where we will bully the South Korean players, make it difficult for them to pass the ball, to counter, and hopefully you can get some points there. Those two games are going to come first, though. We play South Korea away, and then our Iran game, which is supposed to be at home. Unfortunately, yet again, we're going to be playing our games in Doha rather than in Baghdad or Basra, which is quite unfortunate. But, you know, being an Iraqi fan, you're probably used to having to witness these difficulties anyway. So those two games come very quickly. That's going to come in the span of. So the first game's on the 2nd of September, then the second game is on the 7th. So that's 5 days. You're going to be playing these two games. Um, South Korea to Qatar, that's about an 8 hour flight, if I'm not mistaken. That's a long flight, and you could expect the players to be tired and fatigued, especially after the Iran game, where you know our players, they're going to give 110% every time against Iran. So the question is, can we get anything from those two games? I don't know, but it really all depends on how the manager approaches those two games. Is he going to play for a draw? Is he going to actually try to get a result? Which is going to be tough considering that we've barely played any matches under him. There's not a quick turnover. But then the other games come. So first of all, we go to Lebanon away. Then we play the UAE in Emirat. Then our home games, or supposedly home games, against Syria, then South Korea. Then, fortunately for us, we have the FIFA Arab Cup. Now, I think this is such a blessing because we play Oman, Bahrain, and Qatar, all in Qatar, where we should be used to playing there, and it gives us a little break from the World Cup qualifiers. And hopefully, that's a chance for Advocate to really experiment, to try out new ideas. Essentially, it's three friendlies in the middle of our World Cup qualifying campaign, and I'm just so happy that we have this opportunity. Because if we didn't have these opportunities, I think it would have been a lot harder for us to actually arrange friendlies that create the same kind of intensity and the competitive environment that you are going to get in the Arab Cup. And but our last game of the qualifiers will then be Iran, Lebanon, UAE, and Syria. So the last match will be on the 29th of March 2022. That's not long. That's a year and a half worth of football to squeeze in that many games in. It's going to be interesting. I think one of the main issues we're going to have is our fitness. Uh, we've not looked very fit in a long time. I think the last time I actually thought our side looked very fit was in the Asian Cup 2015 when we had Gonzalo Rodriguez as our fitness coach. So it's going to be interesting. I think our fitness is going to be a very, very big deal over the next few set of games. But, you know, Dick Advocaat, they call him the general. He's somebody that likes to be in control of everything. He's going to be somebody that he will probably clash with quite a few individuals in the Iraqi FA and the Iraqi team. I'm going to be very intrigued to see which players make the cut, which players don't make the cut. I mean, we talk about Katanec, and Katanec did do a good job to some extent, but he'd never really coached at the highest level, whereas Dick Advocaat has. So it's going to be interesting. How do I say this in a nice way? To see him going from coaching the likes of Holland to now having to coach the likes of Humam Tariq and Ala Abdel Zahra and Ala Amhawi. You know, that's a big division in quality between what he's used to and what Iraq have at his disposal. I'm hoping that we're going to now explore the possibility of reintroducing expats. There are a lot of good players available, keen and eager to play for the national team. However, as was disclosed once Katanec left, Apparently so that most of the decisions to leave the expats out came from Katanec. Now, believe that or not, I don't know, but my interactions with Katanec, although they have been very few, uh, he is a stubborn person. He is somebody that doesn't take no for an answer. He wants his own way, which is not too dissimilar from Dick Advocaat, but I'm hoping Dick is going to go to the national team and see that what we currently have as a first team, that's not going to qualify you to the World Cup. I truly think that there are so many issues in our current first starting 11 that without expats we have no chance.
No, I totally agree. Uh, it was clear to me, like you like from the last games, like we need to change in terms of personnel, especially like when you have nobody from the bench that you can bring in to change the game. It's tough, and we're really hamstringing ourselves when we're not calling up the all the players that we have available throughout Europe and around the world in general. So like, when you have someone like Justin Moran, he can come off the bench or even start the game, and change things. We don't have enough of that. We have when you can bring in Gino and Hamed, you have there's a long list. I'm not going to go through each one of them, but the thing is, like, you have all these players and you're not using them, especially in qualifiers like this and in such a key moment. You want to be able to use all the best players that you have available to you. That's the whole thing for the national team. It should be the best players for your nation. And so it was frustrating not seeing anybody from outside of Iraq and from the typical names that we always see, when it was so clear that it's not working. We need a bit of a change.
I disagree.
Especially
I
in an
disagree with
attacking
you on
sense.
one sense that you shouldn't always take your best players. You should always pick your best team. But I think the team that Katanec was picking was not his best team. That team would have done a lot better with, for example, a proper right back, a creative attacker. So, I mean, I don't think you should just pick all the players based on their name or he plays in this league or he's got this CV. No, you should bring in players that would make your team the best team possible. There's nothing wrong with having players that are playing in Iraq if they're able to perform. There were so many players that come from the Iraqi league that were able to perform at the highest level. Ala Abbas, for example. Nobody was telling you, oh, don't bring Ala Abbas. Nobody was telling you, Mimi shouldn't be in the national team. No, this whole idea that if you're pro expat, no, I'm pro Iraq. I want Iraq to do well. I want Iraq to win games, and I want to see my dream of seeing Iraq qualify for the World Cup. I want to see it happen. And there's no way where Iraq is realistically going to make the World Cup. Nor do they deserve to when they have players like Ala Amhawi in a first team position. That's the worst bit. Do you know what? If he was there on the bench, I think, do you know what? You need some squad depth. Okay, he's got experience. Why not? Starting every single match and never being dropped, never being rotated. I think that was Katanec's biggest weakness. He's just so stubborn in terms of his approach, his decision making. He would constantly have all these friendlies and he would rotate in them. He would bring in new players. But then when it comes to the decisive games, he would never change the team bar one or two players. It was always the same selection. And I think that's why, towards the end of his career with the Iraqi national team, we suffered because it became predictable. Every opposition team knew exactly who's Iraq, who their first team is going to be. It was going to be Jalal Hassan in goal. You were going to have Ahmed Ibrahim and Maytham Jabbar in defence, or Saad Natiq, or Rabin Sulaq, even though he didn't play recently because of different reasons. Then you have on the left, it's always going to be Ali Adnan. Ali Adnan, I mean, I love the guy. I genuinely respect him so much and I adore him. He's not played football in about a year and he's still starting that many games. It's ridiculous. Where's Durgham Ismail? If he's always in the squad, surely you trust him enough to let him play some minutes. I think in those, we had the three games with Hong Kong, Cambodia, and Iran. Durgham played, I think, like 20 minutes. I think it was against Cambodia or something like that in the second game. It's ages ago. I can't remember exactly. but he barely got game time. Durgham Ismail, by the way, is not a small player. Maybe he's not lived up to the expectations we had for him after 2015, where he was incredible. But he's not a bad player. Defensively, he's very sound. But what is it about that these players that what is it about Ali Adnan? I should say that he plays every single game. Yes, he's experienced. Yes, he's a good player. But why are you bringing in a squad of 23 players and only starting 11 of them? It doesn't make sense. And if you don't trust the players on the bench, surely that's more reason to bring in the expats. Bringing the likes of Jilwan Hamid, bringing the likes of Franz Butros, etc., etc. So it was really frustrating, and I think Katanec did shoot himself in the foot. I feel bad saying this. I feel a little bit like I've betrayed him. But the truth is, he's got no one to blame. As the many Iraqi fans that I talk to, they talk in defense of Katanec that this is a mistake, we should have kept him, it's too late into the World Cup qualifying campaign to bring in a new manager, etc. Well, the truth is, under Katanec, we weren't going to qualify. You might as well take a gamble. This pays off, we qualify. Somehow. If it doesn't work out, then do you know what? We weren't going to qualify anyway. Let's go for this. Let's take a chance. Maybe Advocate would be terrible. I'm not saying he's going to be a success, by the way. I don't want anybody coming to me in a year and a half's time telling me, oh, Hassanin, you are wrong. You don't know anything about football. That's fine. Say what you want. But I'm not saying we're definitely going to qualify. I'm saying this is a risk. This is a big, big risk. But I fully support the Iraqi FA's decision to get rid of Katanec. And you know what? The more I think about it, the more it seems like the right move. Because under Katanec, as Hassan, you've said, we were in no man's land. We were at the point where we're not good enough to qualify. We're not bad enough that we're struggling to go against the likes of Lebanon or whoever. Which would have happened if we had an Iraqi manager, let's be honest. Because the amount of nonsense that's come up from the likes of Hakim Shakir and Basim Qasim is unbelievable. All this talk about, oh, the Iraqi FA is anti-Iraqi manager, they're this, they're that, they only care about foreign coaches. Well, if I'm honest with you guys, there's a reason. Because every time we've appointed an Iraqi coach, it's been an unbelievable disaster. The only coach that I have any respect for in the Iraqi game is Radi Shneshil. And even his last campaign with the Iraqi national team didn't exactly go as planned. But at least we have some form of shape under him. At least we passed the ball a little bit well. But now I think Advocate is better than anything else we could have in terms of alternative options. So, do you know what? Yeah, he's got my full backing. I really am excited to see how we do under him. We have a friendly game in, I think we're going to go to Turkey and then Malaga as a kind of camp. It's going to be interesting to see who's invited to that. I don't imagine any expats will be available for that or be invited, but I think that's a good thing. I think if Dick Advocaat goes to that camp in Turkey and that camp in Spain, I think we're playing Saudi Arabia there. There's some talks of us playing Libya as well. I don't know if that's going to go ahead, but it's going to be interesting to see his response for him to get an idea of what the current state of players is. And I'm hoping once he goes there and sees that there are a lot of deficiencies in the squad, we start to invite more and more players. I think if I'm going to pick 5 players that I'd like to see in the immediate time, so I'm not going to start talking about the likes of Zidane, Iqbal or whoever. I mean, right now, the 5 players I would bring in, absolutely Rabin Sulaqa, absolutely Jilwan Hamid, absolutely Justin Miram, Franz Butros, one more. Who would I bring in? Probably Osama Rashid. I think Osama Rashid, former Dutch player, he made his career at Feyenoord. Dick Advocaat was the former manager of Feyenoord, Dutch league inside out. It makes sense, you know. They both speak similar languages as well, English and Dutch. It would make sense for Osama to come back in, have a player that Dick trusts entirely, and I'm not saying build the whole team around him, but it would be an interesting dynamic to have. Then further down the line, you have the likes of Rawan Amin coming back from his injury, maybe hopefully Ali Al-Hamadi, Cardo, these players growing in and maturing, although I don't know if Dick's going to be the manager for by the time that happens. But there are a lot of players available, especially in the Swedish league. So I think we need to wait and see. And yeah, like I said, I think For now, it seemed like a sensible decision, although a very, very big risky one.
Yeah, like I can mostly agree with that for sure. A change definitely needed to be made. My nervousness around making the change at the time was the question is like, were we going to get someone better? Uh, Looking at who we did get, I think that was, I think we're in good hands overall, because he is a very experienced coach at the top level uh, for so many years. So it's you can't say that his credentials are you can't criticize his credentials or anything. Like Katanec came in with much much lower credentials in comparison. So uh, we'll have to see how it plays out. But on the surface level, it's not a bad appointment at all. It's just we're gonna have to see how he works with the players that are available and how he deals with the FA. As we mentioned, he is a very a coach who wants control over everything in his team. So we'll see how that plays out. Overall, I think he's got a lot to do in a very, very short time. And so that's one thing that I definitely agree is that it's good for him to, for the short time when he's going to have his friendlies to see what he's going to be working with. I think the FA is going to be picking for him, the players that they're going to give him right away since there's such a short time. But, when he sees what is available, I'm really, really hoping that he does take a look at, players outside of Iraq. The main point is when I talk about expat players, it's not that I want them just for the sake of where they're playing. It's all about giving every player a fair chance. So that's not something that I saw happening in the past, and so hopefully with Advocaat coming in, that changes. I definitely think that we could use having the more experienced expats in the national team in the setup in
So I
this
was I was gonna
crucial
ask you
moment.
basically, which five expats do you think would be like priority for Advocate to bring in?
I'd say exactly the same five that you mentioned, just because the likes of Justin, extremely experienced, really knows the setup of the national team. He's played how many games now? Quite a number with the national team. So I think he would be easy choice. Rabin Sulaka for sure. He same thing, experience with the national team, knows the other players. Easy choice. Gino and Hamed just for his quality and for his experience as well. He knows how to play crucial games, how to play. He's played in very strong leagues his entire career, so definitely a player I would want in the national team. Franz Potros for sure as well. Yeah, right back is a position that we need. And for the fifth, Osama Rashid is a good pick. It's just hard for me because we need a player. We need players who can change the team, in terms of performance and level. Osama Rashid is a very high quality player, but his position is not an easy one to just put him into the team, and then expect him to change things. It's someone who needs to know to for the whole team to work well with him.
Yeah,
And
I
it's just
think with Osama,
that would
it's
be
an
my pick.
interesting one. I think Osama as a player, he kind of needs the team built around him because of the position he plays. I don't think he's a player
Yeah,
that will have a huge impact individually, but he plays a very important role in the team itself. And I think with him in the team performs better, but you would need a very specific team for him to flourish in, if I'm honest with you. If we look at, for example, Santa Clara, that team was built for Osama Rashid, and he did amazing there for the few seasons that he was there. I don't think it really worked for him in Turkey though, because when he moved there, I think the dynamics of the team was slightly different. But I think as a personality, as a person, as an experienced player, we talk about players playing at the highest leagues. Osama Rashid's played at the highest leagues compared to any of those players currently in the national team. The only one that would come close would be Ali Adnan. So that brings an element of understanding in terms of how to train properly, wisdom, looking after the younger players in the squad, etc. And like I said, there's the common factors of the Dutch heritage growing up in Holland that Advocate will see in Osama, hopefully, and maybe he'll see him as an important player to have. The other player, of course, is Rawan Amin. Rawan started his career, I think it was Herveen, again, Dutch based and great guy, but just right now he's currently recovering from a quite a difficult injury, ACL tear. He returned, but with an ACL tear, it's never a straightforward recovery. There's always kind of setbacks, and hopefully, where he currently is right now is going to be nothing major. But yeah, don't expect him in the national team anytime quite soon.
Yeah, so it is a strange time in Iraqi football where we have three different coaches across all the different systems, two of them brand new. Imam Mohammed at the U20s, Sokup with the U23 Olympic team, and Advocaat coming in for the senior team.
I think it's an interesting time for Iraqi football. I think the FA are at a point where they're trying to actually improve us, and they're trying to show some initiative, but this needs to be part of a wider plan to really develop Iraqi football. And the only way that's going to happen is at ground roots. You could bring in all the managers you want. You could bring in a foreign coach, a local coach, but unless at grassroots level you're kind of developing networks, you're developing youth clubs for um, on a scale across Iraq, not just Baghdad, you're really going to struggle to bring in high quality footballers. Iraq's problems are only going to be solved with developing grassroots clubs, helping players when they as young as 5, 6, 7 to find their feet, learn game the correct way. Because the players that we have currently, and I think Iraqi football in general, the players coming in to the national team, the Olympics team, the under 20s, on the ball, I think they're okay. Like technically, they're okay. But where Iraqi football really lingers behind the rest of the world is where it comes to tactics. In terms of decision making, football IQ, this is an area that we really do struggle with. And the problem with that is that once the players don't learn the correct way of playing football at a young age, it's very hard to learn. Because you see it right now with the national team where we have players like Amjad Adwan or Humam Tariq. And I keep mentioning those two, but I don't mean it like I'm picking on them. This is just an observation. So no one call me out saying, "Oh, you have something against Humam Tariq." No, this is not what this is about. Because other players do this as well. The likes of Ahmed Ibrahim. You see in the national team when we're losing, and the players start to panic, and they immediately revert to Route One football, where they just start lumping the ball forward. And this, for me, is clearly a tactical issue that the players from a young age are not taught to pass the ball properly. In terms of like their shooting technique, they're good. You have players like Ali Faiz who come through the system and can score worldies. You have Ali Adnan as well with his free kick ability. They've scored incredible goals. Even Amjad Atwan against Cambodia scored that amazing 40-yarder. Technically, their players are good enough. They're not amazing, but they're good enough, especially at the Asian level. The problem that we're failing to really address is at a tactical level, how do the players move across the stadium? I said the stadium, the pitch. How do they cope under pressure in terms of passing the ball? Do they stand in the right positions? Do they make the right decisions in terms of when to pass, when to shoot, etc.? Anybody who's spent 10 minutes watching the Iraqi national team will tell you absolutely not. Just watch the game against Iran or Hong Kong. You have players like, for example, Hussein Ali. Hussein Ali is considered one of our best players. Technically, he's amazing. He gets the ball, he drops his shoulder, he can beat a man, he can shoot from distance, he can do a lot of skills, but his decision making is atrocious. And this is something that can only really be developed at a young age, where you have coaches that can actually focus on the tactical aspect of football, developing these skills: when to pass, when to shoot, when to find the man, when to launch it, when to cross, etc. The appointment of Ahmad Muhammad, for example, and Sukop, it indicates that they're starting to think of the bigger picture. They're bringing in two foreign coaches, one for the Olympics team, one for the first team, And Ahmad Mohammed might not be the worst thing we see for the under 20s because he's a player that started his career there. The youngsters will relate to him. He's a big name. Hopefully they'll respect him. But the under 20 Arab Cup didn't look amazing. There were so many instances where I thought, yeah, exactly what I say is the problem. You can see it there with the under 20s team. Some of the defending in the first game was abysmal. We played Comoros. We lost by some way, even though on paper we have a very good team. You had players like Blind Hassan as well coming in, expats. You had Shwan Mohammed coming from Lazio, and still we struggled to beat Comoros despite being 2-0 up. Lebanon we won comfortably, but unfortunately in the last game against Senegal, we took the lead, but we couldn't hold on. Having said that, Senegal are a very good team. Still though, it showed you that with the Arab countries, we are a bit behind where we should be. We talk so much about Iraq being this huge footballing nation. We produce very good players. We're the Asian Cup champions from 2007, etc., etc. We love to talk a lot about how great we are. The reality is, when it comes to these tournaments, and we're not using fake age players, we are struggling. And the question is, where do we go from there? Dick Advocaat, Miroslav, Sokop, these guys are just like stopgaps. Until we actually fix the problem from a grassroots level going upwards, we're not really going to go anywhere. I can't remember who it was I was watching. They were talking about Japan in the 80s. I think it might have been Yunus Mahmoud actually. They're talking about Japan in the 80s, how the Arab teams used to batter them, especially Iraq. We had a very good team in the 80s. But what they did to rectify it is that they completely redeveloped their understanding of football. They brought in foreign coaches. They brought in actual like planners to plan out where the national team was going wrong, what the flaws were in the Japanese game, and they started down and they built upwards from the youth team. So we need to start looking at football from that dynamic. And in the Arab Cup, it really should be an important indicator to the Iraq FA of just how far behind the rest of the world we are. And if we don't address these issues very soon, then it could be Iraq actually progressively falling behind the competition. Because if there's anything I learned during this World Cup qualifying campaign right now, it's that teams are improving. If you look at a team like Syria, who has even worse situations than us, they at times look more organised than we do. They at times look like they play better football than we do. And then you look at teams like Thailand, who looked very good at times, and they didn't even qualify. The UAE did. You look at teams like Vietnam. Vietnam were getting a lot better than where they were just 5 or 6 years ago. So it's really now or never. If the Iraq FA don't make drastic changes, then we are going to be screwed for the next decade or two. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and on the Arab Cup, we have a number of players, expat players who could make a difference for us, as we saw at the most recent one with Blind Hassan, who right away made himself clearly one of the better players on the team. There was also Shwan Mohammed available for us, but things really went sour there for some reasons that maybe we don't know at the moment. Things just didn't work at all, and he left halfway into the competition. But overall, there's quite a large number of players in that age group that I really hope we can take advantage of the national team. We have the likes of Zidane at Manchester United. You have Cardo at Crystal Palace, Ali Hamadi. There's so many players in this age group who we really need to bring them into the fold, because when you look at other players, even at the Arab Cup, like as a big example, Comoros, who beat us in the first game 4-3, I think. If you look at their squad, I think all but a small handful of them are playing in French clubs. Almost all of their team are expats. You look at other countries within that region, North African region. they're all taking full advantage of their expat players, even at the youth level. I think it was Tunisia, Hannibal Mejbri, also at Manchester United, and they're taking full advantage of all these kinds of players who are popping up. So we really need to, look at this as and try to emulate it as much as possible.
I was reading the other day, Hassan. Sorry to interrupt. I was reading just to build on this note. I was reading about the Afghanistan team, and they have called up 4 expat players playing across the world, and they're bringing them to the national team. And when I was reading that, all I could think about is what is going on with Iraq, where I'm not, with all due respect to Afghanistan, they're not exactly known to be a footballing nation, whereas us, we love to pretend that we are, and they're bringing in all these players, and the mighty Iraq with all the supposed oil money that we have, and the Iraqi FA, and this and that, we actively don't bring in our players. It was such a strange and frustrating reading about those Afghani players. But good on them. Good on them. It's us that are the backwards one. Everyone else seems to be trying to actually improve.
Yeah. So when you have all of these players, it makes no sense not to at least give them a chance and try to have them into the fold of the national team and grow with the rest of the players. At the same time, it's not a replacement for building up the base of your local league, your local players as well. That's something that really needs work on in Arab. And when you look at other countries, even close, not even Japan, like very close to us, Qatar, looking at the strides that they made over the last 10, 15 years, bringing in very, very high level coaches from Spain, from all across Europe, to come in and raise a generation of players who went on and won the last Asian Cup. So you need to be working on both fronts and not alienate players from outside of Iraq, and then also building up the level, the tactical level of your local players and training them in the correct way, tactically speaking, from the lowest age groups, because tactics and the ability to know what to do on the pitch, where to go, where to move, what kind of runs to make, all of these aren't things that are easily developed beyond a certain age level in a player. So it's something that every player has to have that as a basis. So it's something that's we're really, really lacking in that up, and hopefully we can work on that moving forward.
Let's have a look at some of the latest transfer news. Ali Adnan finally leaving Vancouver after a few years. What's the latest with him?
This seems like it was something coming. He hadn't been able to play with his team for close to a year. I think his last match with them was last fall, and due to visa issues, he just couldn't travel. And in fact, I think at Katanec, the visa issues were from an administrative error from the Vancouver Whitecaps. So a bit of a mess overall, and it was just better for both parties to end the contract. His contract was weighing heavily on their wage bill, and they have so many problems in the team. I guess they figured it's better to reallocate those funds to a different position. In any case, he's currently training by himself in Dubai. So we'll see. The latest rumors that we've seen for him is possibly a move to Turkey. The real issue that I see in terms of like what kind of moves he can get to this point is that he hasn't played for so long, so it's hard to see better clubs going for him given that point. I just hope that he gets a good move and he doesn't settle for a Middle Eastern league, which I'm sure he'd have offers there. I think he still has a lot to offer in a good European league.
Hopefully, yeah. So it does seem like he's heading to Turkey, and that wouldn't be the end of the world. I'd still like to see him somewhere else, in Western Europe, but I think that's unlikely, especially a player at his wages. We'll have to wait and see. Another player who's likely to be on the move is Ali Al Hamadi. The players failed to agree contract renewal terms with Swansea. He just finished as the under 23 player of the year, despite only starting and playing with the under 23s last season. And the player has shown that he's able to really play at the highest level. However, he's looking for a new club. He's been training with Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest are a massive, massive club, rich history, and the fact that he's close to signing for them is a great move in my opinion. I think that he will be one of the players that hopefully pushes them towards the Premier League in the next few years, and I'm hoping that he'll get opportunities with the first team, if not this year, at least the year following. But yeah, Championship, it's not a bad level. It's a very, very competitive league, and it's going to be very exciting to see how he does there. Another player also looking like he's going to be on the move is Ala Abbas. Ala Abbas, of course, is with Gil Vicente in the Portuguese league. However, he's not played in a while. He did play in their last game, if I'm not mistaken, right? They won 4-3. But there was talks of Shorta coming in for him. But I'm not sure what's happening with that. Would the player really leave Portugal after such a short spell? My my inclination, unfortunately, would be that if he does do that, it would really be a poor move. The player has so much to offer, despite having a rocky start with injuries. If he falls back and tries to go back to Iraq now, it's very hard to come to Europe, go back to Iraq, and then come back to Europe again. And I think that would really indicate a lack of initiative, a lack of eagerness and determination to try to make it at the highest level. We've talked previously about these Iraqi players when they make these moves to Europe. A lot of them are scared, a lot of them are looking for financial assurances, a lot of them just want to start football games without actually having to work that hard in training. Ala Abbas, we talked about how hopefully he's going to be different. He understands football, he's technically very good, tactically he's okay as well in terms of his movement in the box as well. So if I see him go back to the Iraqi league, I'm going to be very, very annoyed, very, very upset. I think he's a player who's got so much to offer, but unfortunately with Iraqi players, they do make decisions like this. So we're going to have to wait and see. I say that, if you look at what's happening in Iranian football, they're having nearly all their first team squad playing outside of Iran. So it shows you how the rest of the world and Asian football, they're trying to get their players out there, getting them into Europe's best leagues. You even have, for example, Sardar. Looks like he's off to Bayern Leverkusen. So it seems for me that you have all the major nations and the smaller ones going in one direction, and Iraq not necessarily going backwards, but just stuck in this little rut and struggling to get out of it. So it's a bizarre time for Iraqi football, if I'm honest with you. Another player, Jilwan Hamad, he's gone back to Örebro. Yasser Qasim's old club. They currently have another Iraqi player called Hussein Ali, their right back, who's, according to Yasser Qasim, a very, very good footballer, and he plays for the Swedish youth team. Could it be that we get Hussein Ali and Jilwan back with the national team? That would be amazing. It's two very, very good players. Jilwan, of course, going back to Sweden, where he started his career, and it should be an interesting move for him. He had offers from the UAE, but he couldn't agree terms with them. However, a player that has moved to the UAE is Osama Rashid. Osama Rashid, he moved from Santa Clara, he moved to Turkey. I didn't think it really worked out for him in Turkey, so he's in the UAE now, playing for Khorafan. He seems to be enjoying life there. I've messaged him recently. He's posting daily from the beach, despite the heat there. So he's happy. I think he's at the point in his career where he kind of wants to settle down. So it's interesting. There have been a lot of moves for the Iraqi national team. We need to wait and see now what happens with the new manager, with these expats. What happens to these youngsters that we referred to, like Ali Al-Hamadi and the players in the Arab Cup under 20s. It's a bizarre time for Iraqi football, and the next year and a half is going to be a very interesting period.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. This the thing is, like, we really need I think of a little bit of a change in kind of the culture of Arabi players, like to seek out these moves to Europe, kind of like with Mohamed Ali when he first went to Portugal, and Abbas. So yeah, really hoping he tries to stick it out there and try to push and solidify himself there, and hopefully we can see more in the future going there.
The next month is going to be interesting to see what happens with the new manager of Iraqi football. It's going to be interesting to see the response from him following the game with Saudi and the camps in Turkey and Malaga. We need to wait and see. I think the next month is going to be very, very interesting, especially keeping an eye on which expats will be invited, if any are going to be invited. And we need to be patient. Within, 1 month and a bit, we're going to be playing our first World Cup qualifying game. I'm getting nervous just thinking about it, but we need to wait and see. So we'll leave it on that note. If you guys want to get in touch, find me on Instagram and on Twitter. The @ is @Iraq Football Pod. Hassan, where can they find you?
Yeah, on Twitter, @HassanO_1193.
Thank you so much, guys. Please reach out. We do want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the new manager? Do you think getting Katanec was the right move? Do you think we're mistaken in saying that bringing in Advocaat is the correct move? Let us know. We always want to hear from you guys. And please don't forget to share. Don't forget to subscribe. The only way we can grow our channel is through your contribution. We'll be back with another episode very, very shortly, hopefully with some good news about Iraq playing well under Dick Advocaat in the friendlies. However, until then, Yalla ya Iraq.